In this video, we will talk about how to construct research arguments. How do we make and support a claim in a research argument? We're continuing to study Booth, Kalam, and Williams's all-time classic, The Craft of Research, published in 2003 by the University of Chicago Press, and this video is focused on Chapter 7 in this book. We will talk about the similarities and differences between a research argument and a conversation. We will talk about how to base claims on reasons and how to base reasons on evidence. We will talk about how we can acknowledge and respond to alternative points of view. We will discuss warranting, the relevance of reasons that you use in your argument. We will also talk about how you can build complex arguments out of simple ones. And we will talk about arguments and your ethos. All right, so what do we do in a research report? We do four main things. First, we make a claim. Then we back it up with reasons which are based on evidence. We also acknowledge and respond to other views. And sometimes we explain our principles of reasoning, right? So if you think about it, these are elements of any conversation. So when you are writing a research report, remember that this is an act of communication similar to the kinds of communication that that occur in daily, routine conversations that you are an expert in participating in, right? So your job as a writer of a research report is really to think as if you are both sides in this communication, right? So you have to imagine you don't only think about how you as a writer make a claim, back it up with reasons, and acknowledge, respond to other views and explain your principles of reasoning, but you also should imagine yourself as a consumer, as a reader of your research report, and think about how your reader will react to your claims, to your reasons, to your evidence, and other elements in your research report. So, when thinking about your readers, it's useful to keep in mind that your readers, the readers of your research reports, are likely to ask these 5 questions. First, they want to know what do you claim? So you want your claim to be formulated very clearly for your readers, right? Then readers tend to ask what reasons support that claim. Be sure to formulate your reasons very clearly, and it's useful for the beginning to have those reasons after all. Next, readers tend to ask what evidence supports those reasons, right? So that means they want to find that kind of evidence easily in your research report, and they want to understand that evidence. So you should write about it in a clear and understandable way. The next question readers often ask is, do you acknowledge this or that alternative, complication, objection, and how do you respond? So this probably is one of the challenging things for beginning researchers to think about, right? This requires a little bit expertise in the field, and it requires some preparation. And usually classes like thesis writing or graduate seminars where you have an opportunity to receive feedback, where people can express the questions that they have, when they can ask you about, when they can tell you about the alternatives or objections that they have, are really, really useful, right? So use those opportunities to workshop your research as much as you can, okay? And finally, readers tend to ask, what principle or warrant justifies connecting your reasons to your claim, right? We will talk about it more later in this video. So, what are reasons? What are claims? Well, in our reasons, a reason is a sentence or two explaining why your readers should accept your claim. Okay, so a reason usually starts with a because. Okay, so here's an example. You see here, this is a claim supported by a reason. Okay, so I highlighted I put this claim part in blue and the reason part in red so that you can see it easily. So the claim that this author is making is that the emancipation of Russian peasants was an empty gesture. Okay, and well, this word claim, I put it here. Of course, you don't do that in your research reports, right? And the reason that this writer is using to support this claim is this: because it didn't improve the material quality of their daily lives. Again, I put the word reason here just for you, for pedagogical purposes of this video, right? So you can see that according to this author's view, the emancipation of Russian peasants was really didn't have any significance or any impact on in reality. What happened is the peasants' lives, the material quality, note that perhaps, well, spiritually they were uplifted, feeling that they were like emancipated and free people, but the author is claiming that because the material quality of their daily lives didn't change, so in material terms, their lives were the same after emancipation as it was before emancipation. So therefore, the claim of this author is that the emancipation was an empty gesture. Okay, so this is an example of a reason that is used to support a claim. And here, what usually we do support, we base our claims on reasons. And one useful thing here is to distinguish a claim from a main claim. Okay, so a claim is really any sentence that asserts something, like we saw in the previous example. However, a main claim is the sentence or more that your whole report supports. Okay, so something usually called a thesis, right? So this is like the big claim that your research paper or diploma project or dissertation is making. Okay, and this big claim may consist of smaller claims, or the smaller claims can be found on like smaller levels, like maybe in a chapter in your dissertation, or maybe like a part of your article, right? And reasons, they can support this just ordinary claims and also the main claim, right? So whether your claim is main or not, you use reasons to support them. Okay. So one difference between casual conversations and the communication that happens in research reports, between the researcher and the readers, right, is that, casual conversations do not, they just support a claim with reason, and they just stop there, right? Let me give you an example here. In talking to your friend, you could say, hey, we should leave, and that would be your claim, right? You're claiming that it is important that you guys leave, and your reason is because it looks like rain, right? So you don't need to add anything. You don't need to add anything. It's pretty clear, and your friend will likely agree with you, right? You don't need to say anything else. But in research, in addition to supporting a claim with a reason, researchers need to support that reason with evidence. Okay, so evidence, it's something that your readers, the accepted facts, or something that your readers can see, touch, smell, hear, taste, right? Some objective, some facts. Okay, so the structure of an argument in a research report is likely to be more like, here's a claim, and this claim is true because of this particular reason, and that reason is based on this particular evidence. Okay, so you have to base your claim on a reason, and that reason should be supported by evidence, in contrast to just casual conversation. So let's look at this example from the book, right? And here, the claim, let's just read it together. TV violence can have harmful psychological effects on children. That's the claim number one. Because, remember, here's our reason, right? Because those exposed to large amounts of it tend to adopt the values of what they see. And this reason supports claim one. Okay, so there is their constant exposure to violent images makes them unable to distinguish fantasy from reality. Here we see reason 2 supporting reason 1 and claim, well, it's claim 2. So we see a claim, there are some reasons, we can see them, right? And you cannot just stop here if it's a research report, okay? Because this is the level of casual conversation. No matter how fancy the words are, no matter how academic it sounds, it's still just, it doesn't have the main, one of the main elements, the evidence supporting your reason, okay? And here we add that evidence. We want to support our reasons with evidence. And the evidence that this author chose to use is as follows. Smith, 1997, found that children aged 5 to 9 who watched more than 3 hours of violent television a day were 25% more likely to say that most of what they saw on television was really happening. Right? So this author chose this research conducted and written by Smith in 1997 to argue that the reason supporting the claim, right? The reasons that constant exposure to violent images makes them unable to distinguish fantasy from reality, right? So really, this evidence is supporting this particular reason, right? And of course, we're seeing just like a piece of this article, but I think you get the hang of it, right? You have to support your reasons with evidence in research writing. So, okay, you developed a claim and you based it on reason and you based it on evidence. What's next? Are you done? Pretty much no. Thoughtful readers, they will not accept your claim just because you back it up with your reasons and your evidence, right? It's not enough. Although you have to really pat yourself on your shoulder. You did a good job already, but you need to work more, right? So thoughtful readers are likely to question really any part of your argument. They can question your claim, they can question your reason, they can question your evidence, or they can question all of those things. Okay, so your job as a researcher is to really kind of embrace this, right? You are communicating, you are engaging into a conversation with your readers. So you have to be ready that not everybody will accept your claims or your reasons or your evidence, right? So what, the readers could come up with some evidence that you haven't used, right? And that evidence could actually contradict your reasons or claims. And they can interpret your evidence differently, right? They can draw different conclusions from the same evidence. They can also actually reject the truth of your evidence. They may say, "Hey, there is new paper which found the opposite." They can challenge the relevance of your evidence, right? They might agree that your evidence is true. Is true, however, it's not relevant to your reason or your claim. And they can also come up with alternative claims that you didn't even consider, right? So, your job as a researcher is to anticipate as many questions as you can. So remember that as we talked about in the beginning of this video, how you, as a researcher writing a research report, a paper, a thesis, a dissertation, you really have to not just be a writer, right? You have to also imagine yourself as a consumer of what you wrote, of which you write, right? To be kind of in both roles, to be an effective research writer. Okay, and after you once you you figure out all the possible questions, as many possible questions your readers could ask, your job is to acknowledge and respond to the most important questions that your readers may have. So, let's look back at our example with the TV violence effect study, right? So, okay, you made this argument that, yeah, TV violence can have harmful psychological effects, right? We read this part in an earlier slide, right? And then you used some reasons, and then you gave evidence from Smith, 1997, right? You're doing that. However, a thoughtful reader may ask, hey, what about selection bias? What if, children or people who are more violent by nature, they tend to watch, a lot of TV and a lot of violent TV programs, then it's not like TV is causing them to be violent. It's really more like this more violent people self-select into more, watching TV more. So that is a very, thoughtful question, and it might be asked in many social sciences. The concept of selection bias is a big thing driving many recent developments, including methodological developments in many fields. So you are really likely to be asked this, hey, what about selection bias, right? So if you expect your readers to ask this kind of question or any other kind of question, it's really wise to acknowledge and respond to it. So because selection bias is like a big thing in social sciences, you are likely, your readers are likely to question your your claims, bringing up selection bias. So here, this author is doing this in response. It is conceivable, of course, that children who tend to watch greater amounts of violent entertainment already have violence values. This is an acknowledgement, right? So the author is acknowledging, yeah, it's possible that there is selection bias, right? And the response of this author to that, possible, really I would say a question that everybody, any informed reader will ask is this. But Jones in 1989 found that children with no predisposition to violence were just as attracted to violent entertainment as those with a history of violence, right? So this author is really effective, is doing a really good job in effectively addressing a potential question about selection bias by arguing that by using this evidence from a published study, which shows that really even children who were not violent before, like by nature, they were also attracted to violent entertainment, So I would personally question this kind of response, because the key phrase here is just as attracted, right? Just as attracted. So they were just, so children, irrespective of their, violence predispositions, they were as similarly attracted to violent entertainment, right? Does that really support the main claim? I'm not sure. That's another thing. But really, what this author doing is acknowledging a potential question about selection bias, and I think more or less effectively responding to that potential question, right? It's. I think some readers might still disagree, but they will respect this acknowledgement and respect that the author provided a response to a potential question. Okay. So in acknowledging and responding to alternatives, the biggest challenge for beginning researchers is figuring out what kind of questions or objections or alternatives will the readers bring up, right? That comes with as with expertise. That comes as you read more, in your field. That comes as you write more. That comes with experience. Okay, that comes with a better knowledge in your field, with expertise and experience. Okay, so again, my advice to beginning researchers would be really use any opportunity to get feedback from as critical audiences as possible, right? Like in economics maybe field where they attack each other during presentations in a way, with questions. They attack with alternatives and objections, but eventually that leads to more rigorous research. Okay, so use any opportunity to workshop your research, no matter. Even if it's not finalized, like even your work in progress, go get feedback, okay, from as many experts as possible. So here are some of the components of a research argument, right? So you claim something, you support it with reason, and you support that reason with some evidence, and you support in presenting all of that, you have to acknowledge all potential questions, objections, and alternatives, and provide responses to them. Okay, these are super important elements of an argument. Okay, so you know, you, another concept that is important is relevance of evidence, right? So even if readers agree with your supporting evidence, they may not see why they should accept your claim. Let's look at this example from the book. Um, Children who are exposed to large amounts of violent entertainment tend to become adults who think violence is a legitimate component of daily life. That's a claim. Because as children, they tend to adopt the violent values in what they see. That's the reason, right? So the reader might ask, I see the truth of the reason, but how is that evidence relevant to the claim? I don't see how this claim follows from this reason, right? And what you do, one thing you could do is provide a warrant, right? A warrant is a general principle that shows why you believe your particular reason is relevant to your particular claim and that you are justified to connect them, right? So in that example here, as a writer, you could add that whenever children adopt particular values, as adults, they tend to accept as normal any behavior that reflects those values. Okay? So, warrants, in other words, are principles that claim that a general set of circumstances predictably allows us to draw a general consequence. And we use it to justify a specific instance, right, that we discuss in our research reports. Here, a caveat is that readers must agree that the specific circumstance qualifies as a specific instance of the general circumstance, right? It is complicated. I know. Warrants are not easy, but you have to understand what they are and learn how to use them if you want to be an effective research writer, right? And with warrants, we don't use them much in, casual conversations, precisely because that would often seem condescending, right? So you want to be careful with using warrants in your research reports and try avoiding being condescending towards your readers, right? For example, imagine the situation, right? You're telling your someone, watch out going down the stairs because the light is out. Right? Again, claim, reason, right? You don't need any, you usually don't add anything else, right? Imagine here if you added a warrant, it would sound like this. When it's dark, you have to be careful not to misstep. That's the warrant. So watch out going down the stairs because the light is out, right? Doesn't that seem condescending? Yes, it does. It's annoying. So don't do that if it is not necessary in your research reports as well. I hope you don't do that in casual conversations either. And you might have noticed that warrants tend to be abstract and therefore they are quite difficult to grasp, right? So I would use warrants sparingly and use them only if if I thought that my readers wouldn't easily see how my reason is relevant to my claim. Okay, let's look at this example here. Violence on television and in video games can have harmful psychological effects. That's my main claim. Few of us question that when children are repeatedly exposed to particular values in graphic and attractive form, they use those values to structure their understanding of the world. That's my warrant, right? And I'm putting it in understandable words. Uh, it still is kind of hard to process, but it makes more or less sense here. In the same way, children constantly exposed to violent entertainment tend to adopt the values of what they see, right? So here, as a writer, I think it's hard for my readers to connect my main claim with with the rest of the argument, right? So I'm adding this warrant. I think it looks pretty good here, but note even here, even in put in quite simple language, it does require an effort from the reader, in order to grasp it. Okay. So we now have covered 5 main elements of a of a basic argument. Okay, this is the structure of a basic argument. You have to have a claim, you support it with reason, and you support that reason with evidence. This is the core of your argument, right? Your job is also to acknowledge alternatives, questions, disagreements, and respond to them if they are important. Then, if you think that the authors can hardly connect your claim and your reason, you provide a warrant, a principle that lets them connect the reason and claim. Okay? So how do you build complex arguments, right? Really, research arguments are tend to be more complex than this beautiful, figure shows us. What we usually do in research arguments, we support a claim with more than one reason. Yeah, we also might support each reason with more than one piece of evidence. We might support each reason with its own warrant. And also because readers of research tend to, we can expect them to see many alternatives to any complex argument. Careful researchers respond to many potential, readers' questions. So there are a lot of acknowledgments of those objections, potential objections, and questions, and responses to them. Right. So all of this kind of complexifies, makes your argument more complex. That's why research articles or dissertations or theses are not, a fun read. They are often, they require effort to read, but there are ways to make them more enjoyable for the reader, of course. So, also, each element in those complex arguments are likely to be treated as a claim, supported with their own arguments, right? So you get the idea, right? You complexify, you can make you turn your argument into a more complex one by adding more elements to this main, structure. That is called by Booth, Kalam, and Williams as thickening an argument, right? It becomes thicker and thicker. I like this, this wording, this image of getting your argument thicker, right? So, I agree with Booth and Kalam and Williams in that thickening your argument really is one way. Of getting your readers' confidence in you. That's how you get the reader's trust. Okay? Remember, readers always judge the quality of your mind and even your implied character, right? Something that we call an ethos. Uh, Ethos is an image of yourself that you project through your argument, right? Remember, we are in a conversation, so people read off who you are from your writing, right? So your job is to support your claims thoroughly, consider all other points of view thoroughly, right? And do your job very well. So because all of that gives readers reason to trust you. Okay, eventually your ethos turns in the longer run into your reputation. Okay, and as a researcher you should care very deeply about your reputation. In this five among this in this figure, your reputation also serves almost like a sixth element in your argument, right? If your readers don't know you, right, as a researcher, you're just a beginner, right, then your job is to really develop a very solid argument, very thick argument where you support your claims thoroughly, consider other points of view and respond to them, acknowledge them, provide warrants as if necessary, right, in order so that your reader says, okay, I trust this person, right? And if people know you, then you want your readers to immediately say, oh, yes, I trust this person because he or she is known for really being a careful and thorough researcher. Okay. And really, as a researcher, your job is to learn how to design arguments, not just for yourself, but really for your readers. Okay? Um, don't be tempted to fall back on the forms of arguments that you already know. Um, if you are stepping into a new discipline, right, your job is to find out what kinds of arguments the research community you're entering expects you to make, right? So all fields use the elements of the 5 elements, the 6 including the reputation, right, the 6 elements of arguments described in this video, but each field may handle those elements differently, right? So your job is, during your literature review, whenever you read something in your field, you have to note the kinds of evidence used and the kinds of evidence never used, right? So here are some examples, right? Be sure to pay attention whether your field uses personal beliefs and anecdotes from writers' own lives. Um, this is often used in first-year writing courses, right? Um, does your field use or never use direct quotations? Does your field use or never use citations and borrowings from previous writers? Fine-grained descriptions of behavior, statistical summaries of behavior, quantitative data collected in lab experiments, photographs, sound recordings, videotapes, films, detailed documentary data in the form of a story, networks of principles, implications, inferences, conclusions, independent of factual data, as in philosophy, right? So be sure to learn your field. And in the beginning, if you're feeling information overload, cognitive overload, that's fine. That's totally fine. It's really just because you are beginning, and this feeling will go away quickly. Just be sure to read attentively as much as you can in these early stages, and everything will be fine. Thank you for your attention.